Let's talk edge rushers, why don't we? One of the more talked about positions in football, so I had to give my top 10 list. These are, in my opinion, the top 10 edge rushers in football right now. Not taking historical stuff into account, just how good are you today? Let's get into it. Number 10, I'm going Rashan Gary. I'm still going to keep him on the list. Listen, getting banged up last year, sucks for Gary. We still haven't seen him have a big sample size. He had that 1 year where he, was clearly a top 10, probably, maybe even a top 5 guy. And if he kind of repeated that year, maybe we're talking about him as a fringe top 5 guy. But we've only seen that 1 year. It's just purely a sample size thing for Rashan Gary. So while when he's been on the field, he's absolutely looked like he should be better than just number 10. I can't give him that until I see him do it for a bigger sample size. That's just kind of how I view this stuff. So number 10 for now. Number 9, I'm going Trey Hendrickson. When I was doing research for this list, I was kind of shocked at how good a lot of his advanced stats were last year. Just a guy who seemingly has gotten better year after year after year. I don't know how he does it, but every year he's improved and probably had his best year last year and wasn't really talked about at all. Like, even I was surprised by it, and my job is to cover this stuff. So, it's really incredible what he did, and I think that he definitely deserves more credit. So I'm putting him on my list here at number 9. And again, only 1 year of, I would say, like, elite play last year, but a ton of years of very good play prior. And if he keeps getting better, who knows where he'll end up if I do this list next year. Number 8, the always underrated Brandon Graham for the Philadelphia Eagles, a guy who I should be listing off the team names because I know some people like me to do that, so I'll try to do that from here on out. For the Eagles, Brandon Graham, one of the real underrated players, I feel like, quite some time now. He's never gotten the credit he deserves. I don't really know why he doesn't. Maybe it's Philadelphia doesn't have the market that some other teams do, I guess. I don't know. I feel like Brandon Graham is incredible, one of the better players in the league, and definitely deserves to be on this list, so I have him here at 8. Number 7 is Hasson Reddick, and I'll be honest, I do think there is a bit of a tier jump from 7 to 6. I think like the top 6 are guys that like absolutely have to be on your list. 7 through 10, you can you can mix and match a little bit, in my opinion. But Reddick, I think, deserves to be on the list. Last year, again, another guy who it's like if it was if he was what he was last year every year, we're talking about him much better than just number 7. The reason why I'm a little bit lower on him compared to some other guys is I've only seen it for 1 year, and I want to see it for more if I'm going to, feel great at putting him above some of the absolute superstars that are these top 6 that I think are just like, the clear-cut top 6. It's really hard to break into that. I think what Reddick did last year was so good. He deserves to be the best of those guys that I don't have in the top 6. But, let's get into the top 6. Number 6 is Maxx Crosby, another player who just seemingly gets better every single year. Someone who can win in so many different ways, and that's one of the things that I like about him is again, really, that defense, for a large part of it, has kind of been Maxx Crosby carrying stuff, and he's still able to, despite the attention he gets, find ways to consistently get pressure. Another one of those guys who his advanced stats are great, and his, just regular box score stats in game film all look great on top of it. So absolutely a huge fan of Maxx Crosby. I think he's really good, so I have him here at 6. Number 5 is Joey Bosa, who I feel like he's another guy who doesn't get the credit he deserves. It's weird how pass rushers go, where certain pass rushers will get all the attention in the world, and then some other pass rushers, it feels like very few people talk about them. Joey Bosa, I almost feel like because he's only because he's the second best player named Bosa, in my opinion, he doesn't get the attention he deserves. But I also feel like it's only been a recent thing that Nick has surpassed Joey, and I don't think it's a massive surpassment with those players. Bosa is a guy who's great in the run defense and in the pass rush game, someone who has obviously great advanced statistics along with great just traditional statistics. Fantastic player. To me, he's, a top 5 pass rusher in the NFL. And, to me, he's closer to 1 than he is to being off the list. I would say that as well. Number 5, Micah Parsons. I think some people are going to put Parsons a little bit higher on their list. And I certainly think that he has potential to get higher. And I would probably bet on him continuing to climb the ranks as his career goes on because he is definitely younger. I think one thing that holds me back a little bit is he's not quite the elite run defender that the top three are. I do value run defense a pretty good deal when I evaluate edge rushers. That is something that I think is undervalued in edge rushers, and I think severely undervalued in edge rushers. In fact, it's not to say that I think some people act like he's a terrible run defender. He's not. I would say he's an actively good run defender, but obviously his pass rush is what makes him special. And that being said, his pass rush numbers are, if not as good as the top three guys, just like slightly below each of them. So, and again, you have to factor in as well, this guy was playing off-ball linebacker out of college, and even in the NFL, he started as an off-ball linebacker, and I thought still played well as an off-ball linebacker, kind of became a hybrid player who has just recently transitioned to be a pure edge rusher. So, because of that, the sky is the limit for him, and now that he's playing really his first year where he's just going to train all offseason as an edge rusher, who I'm sure will still drop back in the coverage here and there, I'm really excited to seeing where his career will go. For now, though, I have him at 4. Number 3, give me the Defensive Player of the Year, Nick Bosa, who, as I mentioned, he's right now I have him as the better Bosa brother. I made a whole video comparing Parsons and Bosa. I actually also made a whole video comparing the top 2 guys on this channel. Check those out if you're interested. Just search their names and my name, and it'll come up in the YouTube search. But yeah, kind of one of the differentiating factors I had was Bosa actually does have slightly better pass rush statistics than Parsons does, and when you factor in he's a much better run defender on top of it because he's the ferocious run defender, that's just kind of what gave him the nod. I think I can't quite put him ahead of the top 2 guys are Garrett and Watt. I won't tell you what order right now, but obviously it's those 2 guys. I can't quite put Bosa ahead of either of those guys just because they've been doing it for so long at this point. Even though Bosa, I felt like he was definitely as good as those 2 guys typically are last year. I don't know if I've seen him do it as, I don't know if I've seen him be like, debatably, if not just straight up the best player in football for more than 1 year, while he still had other elite years. Myles Garrett and TJ Watt have both had several years of being debatably the best edge rusher in football. So that was my reasoning for putting him at 3. Number 2, I have Garrett, which again, if you want to see a real in-depth talk about why I have him lower than TJ Watt, I do think you could argue Garrett's number 1. Some people do make that argument, and I think it's totally valid. He gets double teamed more than anyone in football. People brought that up in the comments about that video, which is true. He gets a ton of attention and still is so dominant. Again, I think you can flip a coin between him and Watt. The reality is, they're both incredible, and Garrett can, his pass rush stuff is basically as good as TJ Watt's. His run defense stuff is nearly as good as TJ Watt's. That's why he's number 2, and he's been doing it for so consistently. That's why he's a top 2 edge rusher in the league, but not number 1. That's TJ Watt. I just like that TJ Watt does a little bit more than Garrett. He's asked to do more, and he's still able to typically get around the same amount of pressures and sacks, and I think also stops the run just as well and plays coverage, and you could argue he even does some of the stuff better than Myles Garrett. So when you factor on what he's asked to do, which again, a little bit unfair. Maybe Garrett could do it too if he was asked, but he's not asked to do it. So I'm just going to go with the guy who, if I, again, gun to my head, I have to pick one guy. First, please don't hold a gun to my head. But secondly, I would pick TJ Watt, I think slightly, but again, I do think it's incredibly close between the 2 of them. But yeah, that's my top 10 list. TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, Nick Bosa, Micah Parsons, Joey Bosa, Maxx Crosby, Hasson Reddick, Brandon Graham, Trey Hendrickson, and Rashan Gary are the 10. Who did I not mention that you would put in your list, or what do you just disagree with me on? Let's keep the conversation going in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.